Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Et bienvenue à la 17e Prix annuel de Gaspillage Teddies. Welcome to the 17th annual edition of the Teddy Waste Awards. My name is Aaron Woodrick. I'm the Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and I'll be your host for this year's ceremony, along with our beloved mascot, Porky the Waste Hater. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the origin of the Teddies, our annual expose of the worst in government waste, they are unfortunately not named after a lovable stuffed animal, but rather a much less loved individual named Ted Wetherill, who is the former chair of the Labor Relations Board, who was dismissed in 1999 after accumulating an eye-watering $150,000 in meal expenses over 8 years. And Mr. Wetherill may be long gone. His legacy still lives on, manifested in countless and sometimes comically ridiculous examples of waste and cavalier disregard for the public purse. So let's get right to it. This year we have 16 nominees for 3 Teddy Awards, 5 each at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels, as well as our marquee award, the Lifetime Achievement Award. First up, we have the municipal nominees. The first nominee is the Regional District of Metro Vancouver for its $9 million Annacis Wastewater Center, which opened in 2001 as a venue for conventions and weddings. There hasn't been much interest in using it, however, considering it sits right in the middle of an industrial area, right next to Vancouver's biggest sewage treatment plant. The second municipal nominee is Susan Fennell, the former mayor of Brampton, Ontario, who earns a nomination for the second year in a row. A forensic audit determined that Fennell and her staff broke city expense rules 260 times, with new revelations including $70,000 in flight passes and expensing the cost of not one and not two, but 44 IQ quizzes. One can only assume that the mayor didn't like the scores that she was getting back. Third, we have Halifax councillor Brad Johns for spending $25,000, or more than a quarter of his entire discretionary account, on an 18-foot talking robotic Christmas tree. Councillor Johns has also stated that this is hopefully just the beginning, and that in future he'd like to assemble, quote, a Disneyland of sorts by purchasing additional Christmas-themed giant robots, including possibly a elf. Fourth, we have the City of Ottawa for putting up giant lights shaped like badminton rackets in the city's Jack Purcell Park to honor the 1933 World Badminton Champion who hailed from Guelph. Unfortunately, that particular Jack Purcell is not who the park was named for. It's actually named for a completely different Jack Purcell, who unsurprisingly comes from Ottawa. To fix this $45,000 mistake, the city simply removed these strings from the badminton lights and declared them instead to be, quote, stylized trees. And last but not least in the municipal category, we have the City of Calgary for a $559,000 sculpture it installed at the Genesis Center for Community Wellness. One sunny day, the mirrored surface of the 5-meal steel sculpture directed the sun rays and actually burned the jacket of a visitor. So the sculpture was put in storage, ensuring that, of course, it would no longer be a risk to burning anyone except taxpayers. And I have the municipal envelope here. The winner is Brad Johns, Halifax City Councillor. Congratulations, Brad. We're sure your constituents didn't need any parks or playgrounds anyway. Moving on now to the provincial nominees. First up, we have Ontario's Ministry of Energy for their smart meter plan. Last December, Ontario's Auditor General revealed that the cost of installing 4.8 million smart meters had reached $1.9 billion, or nearly double the original estimate. The new smart meters also seem to be causing fires, with Ontario's Fire Marshal linking 23 fire incidents and forcing the province to remove 5,400 of them. But at least it helps save energy, right? I mean, you'd be wrong. In spite of all that spending, peak period energy use is actually slightly up. Next, we have former Alberta Premier Alison Redford, who could forget her, for her now infamous plan to build a penthouse sky palace in Edmonton's historic Federal Building, for which the plans alone cost $173,000. To help cut costs for the over-budget building renovations, the government canceled plans for a $1 million outdoor skating rink, even though the rink's dressing rooms and Zamboni storage shed had already been built at a cost of $832,000. Third, we have British Columbia Superintendent of Achievement, Rick Davis, who in 2013 made the acquaintance of a 17-year-old high school graduate who was DJing at a wedding. After chatting with her about her interest in going to Finland to study its school system, Davis managed to secure funding for her to write a report to the tune of $19,000. The resulting report was just 14 pages long, a veritable steal for taxpayers at just $1,300 per page. Fourth, we have Stephanie Forsyth, the former president of Red River College in Manitoba, another returning nominee, For this year's nomination, Miss Forthlight truly outdid herself, actually pilfering marble from one of her college's own buildings, only to have it installed in the kitchen of her own home. And the final provincial nominee we have is the New Brunswick Liquor Commission, nominated for spending $124,000 on 40,000 glass growlers, which customers could buy and then fill with craft beer from one of the commission's newly installed beer taps. Unfortunately, most of the customers didn't want the growlers, and within a week, the commission gave up and allowed customers to bring their own, leaving the Liquor Commission stuck with an unwanted inventory of approximately 37,000 taxpayer-funded glass growlers. And I have the provincial envelope here. The winner is Ontario's Ministry of Energy for their not-so-smart meters. Congratulations and condolences to the taxpayers of Ontario. Next, we have the federal nominees. The first nominee is Public Works and Government Services Canada. In 2009, during drug raids on Quebec's Kanesatake Reserve, police seized a bulldozer. The courts ordered it destroyed, but instead, Public Works decided to sell it for approximately $5,000. The original owners found out and sued the government to recover the bulldozer. That lawsuit eventually failed, but Public Works tried to get the bulldozer back, paying $65,000 to buy it, and then promptly destroyed it. The second nominee is the Business Development Bank of Canada, which in 2001 provided a $550,000 loan to Ten Chin Nguyen, who had limited experience with indoor gardening, but with BDC's help, managed to start an indoor gardening and hydroponics business. I think we all know where this one is going. Nguyen was subsequently arrested and convicted of conspiracy to produce and traffic marijuana. Shipments were traced to grow-ops worth more than $14 million. But perhaps what's most shocking about this example is that the government managed to invest in a business which actually turned out to be profitable. The third nominee is the Canadian Human Rights Commission for allowing its acting Chief Commissioner, David Langtree, to expense the cost of his commute to work. And we're not talking about a bus pass here. Mr. Langtree has been flying on the public dime from his Winnipeg home to Ottawa since 2006 and continues to do so to this day, racking up expenses of nearly $760,000. The fourth nominee is former Cabinet Minister, MP, and the Mayor of London, Ontario, Joe Fontana, who's convicted of breach of trust, fraud, and uttering forged documents. Fontana altered the contract for his son's wedding reception at the Marconi Club in London, and then submitted it to the House of Commons for a $1,700 reimbursement, claiming it was actually for a function with the finance minister. Despite intentionally forging documents to defraud taxpayers, Fontana retains his annual $122,000 MP pension, courtesy of the taxpayer. And the final federal nominee is Library and Archives Canada, which in 2006 began developing a digital repository in order to receive records in a digital format. The Auditor General found that Library and Archives spent $15 million over 4 years on the repository, tested it, approved it, deemed it operational, and then suddenly shut it down without any documented reason. And naturally, you won't be surprised to know that now, less than 3 years later, Library and Archives is once again trying to develop a strategy to receive digital records. And I have the federal envelope here, and the winner is Joe Fontana, former Cabinet Minister and MP and Mayor of London. Congratulations, Joe. Condolences to the taxpayers of Canada and especially those in London. With any luck, C518 will pass this spring and we can put a stop to convicted politicians collecting taxpayer-funded pensions. And now we have, of course, our fourth and final award, the Lifetime Achievement Award, our highest honor, or worst honor, depending on your perspective. This year's winner is no slouch. They're a past nominee and a past municipal Teddy winner. This year's Lifetime Achievement Award goes to TransLink. TransLink, Metropolitan Vancouver's Transportation Authority. For those of you who are unfamiliar with TransLink's history of waste, just a few highlights for you. TransLink has a Fairgate program, which has run twice its original $100 million budget. They paid $30,000 for a 7-foot statue of a poodle on a 25-foot pole. Spent $500,000 on 13 TV screens at SkyTrain stations, most of which do not even work. They earned a Teddy nomination in 2013 for the cost to mobilize the police, Coast Guard, and airport security after TransLink's police force forgot explosives on a commercial Air Canada plane after a training exercise with their bomb-sniffing dog. And they won the Municipal Teddy last year for spending $4.5 million on a Surrey parking lot that literally nobody uses. And when we say nobody, we mean not a single person. And of course, as an additional poke in the eye, some of you may know, TransLink wants to impose a new 0.5 percentage point sales tax across the lower mainland of British Columbia, and voters will decide the tax's fate in a mail-in plebiscite this spring. Giving more money to an entity that has a proven record in wasting the money it already gets, what could possibly go wrong with that? Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the 2015 Teddy Awards.